Ruchem Abon B'Shem Hashem. B'Shem Egen Shiur Torah Moses Boston. I'd like to welcome everyone to tonight's Rosh from Rabbi Fishel Schachter Shlita. I'd like to give a big yeshikach to all the supporters of tonight's Shiur. For Michael Exter, Zos Chusar for Shleima, for Sarah Bas Dasha, Ramisel Ben Miriam, Hannah Merrill Bas Sprinza, Dov Ben Rivka, and Meir Ben Sarah, B'Soi Shachel Yisrael. I'd like to give a big yeshikach to Rabbi Fishel Laser for sports for tonight's Shiur. Zos Chusar for Shleima, for Reuven Yosef, Ben Brainer, B'Soi Shachel Yisrael. I've given a shikach to Adam Shem for his sponsoring for tonight's Shiur as a Faucet Of Bracha. I'd give a shikach to Mr. and Mrs. Yitzchak Klug for the support of tonight's Shiur. Bili Nishmas Oviv, Moshe Pinchas, Ben Vodaath Halevi, Olav Shalom, the Yartzeit Zayin Elul, and Li Nishmas Avihar of Tzvi Moshe, Ben Shalom Yaakov, Olav Shalom Heshi Jacob. Tanish B'Shem Tzuras B'Tzorah Chaim to have the great Faucet sponsoring a Shiur. We'll have the Chelik and Abatzas Torah of Yegin Shiur Torah's about to start throughout the year. A lot of their annual dinner last week. You can call 718-851-8651 or email ist@yeshivanet.com. Come over to one of the Askonim after the Shiur. Tonight we have the cover to have with us once again Rabbi Fishel Schachter Shlita, noted Magid Shiur, speak on life's unknowns and the Faucet Of Bracha. The cover is calling Rabbi Schachter for tonight's Rosh.
Okay, thank you very, very much. Thank you, Irgin Shiur Torah. Thank you, Moisdes Boston. You know, when you do something once a year, it's always a time of reflection on the past and on the commitment to for next year. I remember last year. I think I remember. Actually, I do remember. When I finished the Shiur, I said, it's time. It's the beginning of Elul. It's a Shiur. It's once a year Shiur. So I said to myself, I know you're not supposed to be Misvada B'Rabim. You're not supposed to say Vidui B'Rabim. But I'll tell you the truth. I said to myself, now is when my diet starts. I said, if I say that, I'll have to report to you a year later. And clearly the busha of failure will force me to maintain my diet. So I am here to report to you that the taste of a good piece of kugel overrides busha. Okay? Like my father's kind of bracha used to say from the Altef and the Vardik, he said like this. He said, Nish zu trinken wine, not to drink wine. There are many times not to drink wine, but the tam from wine is starker from allem. But the taste of wine is stronger than anything else. However, don't intend to give up. Be'ezras Hashem Yisbarach. We will try again, B'li Neder, this year. But this year I mean it. But then again, I meant it last year also. Okay? You know, the Welt says a word like this. This is just for illustrative purposes only. Ask your local rabbi what to do. Halacha l'maisa. They say on one piece of pizza, the bracha is mezainis. On 2 pieces of pizza, you have to wash and make a hamoitzi. And on 3 pieces of pizza, you make a shechianu on your new suit. Okay? No, the Welt says of art that there was a Romanian Yid. Noticed a few people started eating cookies now. It's because we're starting after the Shiur, right? So I can't eat cookies during the Shiur, but you could still hop around another hour. They say there was this Romanian Yid. He comes into a tailor, and he says, "Can you open the jacket? It's quite tight." He looks at it. He says, okay. It's always the question whether you open the jacket or you go up to the next size. So he told him, okay, it's going to be $35. So the man said, what? $35? In Bucharest, the tailors would charge 2 pengo for this. And the tailor said, yeah, but how much is a ticket to Bucharest? Right? You know, see, it's still cheaper over here. Indian of tshuva It says, Va'ata ma Hashem Elokecha she'el meimach. Va'ata is a lashon of tshuva. The word va'ata means now. What does now and tshuva really have to do with each other? And the answer is because you can't do tshuva on the past. You can't do tshuva on the future. There's no such a thing as doing tshuva and then moving on. And Rabbi Matcha Malach, I think he says this line, that was a galach, that he told the Yidela, come on, maybe you take me over this Sunday. The Yid said, what are you talking about? He says, no, really, I need you to cover for me. I can't find another galach. So what am I supposed to do? He said, I can't go into the church. No, I'm not going into the shul. You're not coming into the church. You can do it on the outside. Wait, we do confessions. You come in, people are misvada. He says, I should play the role of a galach. People should come and confess to me. No way. So he told him, what do you mean, no way? He says, I charge $100 a confession. Okay. B'shem Darkei Shalom, I'll do it. So everything went very well. When the galach came back, he noticed no one's coming to be misvada and they're aveiros. He says, what happened? He says, the Yid told us for $100,000 you get the next 10 years of aveiros. Pre-sale, you know what I mean? Like let's give it to a Yidala, you know what I mean? You can't do tshuva on the past, and you can't do tshuva before you do an aveira. Right? It doesn't work. Echte v'oshev, ein laspikin b'yadei lasis tshuva. Tshuva is on now, va'ata. Tshuva is now, but tshuva is on what I did yesterday, what I did 2 years ago, what I did 5 years ago, what I did 10 years ago. Why are you telling me that the tshuva is on now? The Kedushas Levi says that the side of tshuva is when a Yid says, Ani mamin ve'amuna shalema, that the Rebbeinu Shalom gives me a brand new life every second of my existence. As far as the neshama is concerned, the neshama would pack out. Too much of a contradiction with the guf. But the Rebbeinu Shalom says, neshama, you stay. I'll call neshima v'neshima tehalel ka. Every single breath means new life. However you want to interpret. You want to interpret biologically that our cells are constantly reproducing themselves. You want to interpret it whatever, but that's the metzias. And it's understandable because we're not the same person. Picture of a little baby and a 99-year-old Zayda. They're the same person. They don't look the same because the person is constantly biologically changing. But there, the biological difference is so great that it's a stark difference. Over the years, it's from one day to the next. You don't see it. Even from one year to the other, you don't see it. But eventually you see it. I remember when I had to paint my beard white for Purim. Now, they painted black. That's what happens. One of my eneklach was doing it for me. He found a black hair. He said, Zaydi, your beard's turning black. I said, I don't think so. I don't think so. But the Metzias is that we're constantly changing. So there are DNA tests that can tell you exactly how old you are. How? Because the Bria who you are now is not who you were 5 seconds ago. It's not who you're going to be in 5 seconds from now. So understanding that means that the Rebbeinu Shalom is constantly, for every second that we're alive and we can talk and walk and think, the Rebbeinu Shalom is giving us a new life. So the Chedush Yerim says that that's the proof that you can still do tshuva. Because why would the Rebbeinu Shalom do that if you couldn't do tshuva? So I'll call neshima v'neshima tehalaka. So lest someone say, I cannot do tshuva because of what I did, it just piled up too much. Okay, I'm a different person now. I'm a Beria Chadasha. This Beria Chadasha who I am now, as of 9/13, 43, 44, 45, on this night, over here, Monday night in Boston, this person, whoever we are, we're a different person. From the beginning of this year till the end of this year, you're a different person. For some of you, it's because you're going to be much more well-rested after a little nap. But for whatever reason, we're different people. So what I did. Now I'm doing tshuva. This new person wants to do tshuva. Remember, I got one of my new used cars. Be careful, it's a new car. That's a new car. Right? That car is collecting Social Security. For me, it's a new car. But we really are a new car. We really are a new person every second of our life. And that's the aside of ha'ata being a form of tshuva. And that's why we can't live in the past and can't live in the future. I have to thank Hashem, be appreciative to HaKadosh Baruch Hu that at this moment I am a new person. The Gemara says in Masechtas Taanis that there was a fire in the city, fire that ravaged an entire city. One particular shechuna, one particular neighborhood was saved from the town fire. Absolutely nothing happened. And they were sure it wasn't the schus of Rav Huna. And it says they had a dream. Who had the dream? L'chayr, the whole shechuna had the dream, or maybe the whole town had the dream. They said Rav Huna's schus is immeasurable. But if you want to know why the fire didn't touch any of the houses in this particular shechuna, it's in the schus of a yidana, of a woman who used to heat up her oven every Erev Shabbos, and then she invited all of her neighbors that either didn't have an oven or didn't have money to heat up their oven to come and bake their challah l'kavod Shabbos into her home. Now you have to realize the yesod over here, okay? Most people do not look for guests Erev Shabbos before this month. And most balabastas definitely don't want their next door neighbors to come in there. Sometimes, somebody once told me that, I heard from the Sons of Rav that sleeping Erev Shabbos is very important, and he doesn't even understand why they didn't put it in the Seres HaDibros. So I decided from here on, I don't care if this man is at 4 o'clock, even though he has a house full of kids, he goes to sleep at Erev Shabbos. I said, did you feel Har Sinai? He said, I definitely heard the Koilus Ubrakim, and I said, I'm going to sleep now. So you know the famous story, I may have repeated this once too many times, this Ma'aser Shalei Haya, that there was a lady who was really, the whole building heard her screaming every Erev Shabbos, and she continued to yell into Shabbos, and finally somebody said, listen, I can't take this. Guys, he told his family, scream Shalom Aleichem loud. Scream Shalom Aleichem loud because I can't take it anymore. And sure enough, the husband of the screamer came and said, why are you screaming Shalom Aleichem so loud? And the man answered, it's to drown out your Eshes Chayil, okay? Because, what do we have? So think about this woman. Think about this woman who has an oven, and she has wood to heat the oven. And she knows that many people don't have wood to heat the oven. And at the worst possible time that you don't want guests, so she calls in the guests, she calls in her neighbors, she says, please, my oven is yours, bake. I want you all to have fresh, warm Geshmak Challah L'Kavod Shabbos. And she saves the entire town that the fire doesn't attack them. So that's an awesome madrega. But perhaps a notch less than if you didn't invite your neighbor, but your neighbor came knocking Erev Shabbos. And someone told me no. No. If you're in a situation where your neighbor comes knocking Erev Shabbos to come in, that's a notch more. Because if you invite the neighbor to come in, that's your bchira, that's your free choice. You decided you're doing this, you're proud of what you're doing. But when the Rebbeinu Shalom decides, I need you to help someone out now, Erev Shabbos, and take them into your house at the worst possible time, and you accept it, that means it wasn't my decision that I electively did, but Hashgacha put it on me and I accepted it, that's a higher madrega. I remember when I was a bacher, we were eating in different houses in Yerushalayim, and there was the father kept telling the children before they ate all the food, which wasn't much. He said it was rough, this house. It was rough to watch them. Yerushalayim, the family, Meir Sharm family, and they had like a bed on piano hinges that came out, and then they put 4 poles on it. That were the beds on different levels. A bunch of kids, Kanai Nahara. I remember I was sitting with him. We were sitting Friday night. We were singing Zmiris, and they said, "Okay, my kids have to go to sleep, so we'll have to stop now." And I was wondering, so who's stopping your kids from going to sleep? Till I realized they fold the table and they spread out mattresses on the floor in the dining room. But I did watch this father go from kid to kid and say Kriyash Malamita with them with a smile. It was very special. So he used to tell all his kids, this Yid, remember to say L'Kavod Shabbos Kodesh. Before you eat, remember to say L'Kavod Shabbos Kodesh. Remember to say L'Kavod Shabbos Kodesh. When it came to the dessert, the kompot, it wasn't strawberry shortcake. It was some kind of plum little thing. And they were short on the dessert. And there was a big fight amongst the kids, L'Kavod Shabbos Kodesh. And one kid, I remember one kid said, he picked up the kumpat and he said, L'Kavod Shabbos Kodesh, and he gave it away to the other child. And the father smiled, and the father said to him like this. He says, when you eat the kumpat yourself, you have to make it clear you're eating it L'Kavod Shabbos Kodesh. Because you may be eating it l'shem, you enjoy eating kumpat. He said, when you're giving away your kumpat, you don't have to say that it's L'Kavod Shabbos Kodesh. It's automatically L'Kavod Shabbos Kodesh. When you're giving something away, then it's part of you. So the famous, again, the Ma'aser Shlihoya, we have a bunch of Ma'aser Shlihoyas tonight. This woman is walking with her anicle, and suddenly there's a rip current, and the tide, and she didn't hear all that thing about staying away from the hurricane, and her baby, her anicle is swept out of the carriage and swept into the ocean. She cannot believe this, and this grandmother starts hollering and screams at the top of her lungs from the depth of her heart, Rabbeinu Shalom, you can't do this to me, help! And a wind comes, and the baby is swept out of the water into her arms. Mamish, okay, breathing, and she kisses the child, and she looks at him and looks up and says, God, he had a hat, where is it? Can you imagine? Right? But that's really what we do if we understand the appreciation of life. So why do we complain about the hat? It's all because we don't have enough of an understanding of the gift of life that comes every single minute. So I saw in the Sefer Fishel Schachter, it says a nice mashal or story, I don't know, that there was a man, he's running to shul, and as he's crossing the street to go to shul, a car tries to screech to a stop, hits him, he goes flying 40 feet in the air, he lands, he's knocked out at Salah, takes a minute, it turns out he had a slight concussion, otherwise he's good to go. No broken bones, no internal bleeding, no stitches. Imamish comes home the next day in shul, he gives Azah Kiddush, whoa. He had cake and kugel and herring and fancy schnapps. Monkey's uncle, what is that schnapps called? He had the monkey's uncle, he had the monkey's aunt, he had the monkey's grandfather, grandma, alles gewende. Super Kiddush. The next day, somebody else came in, and he gave even a bigger Kiddush. He had the monkey's second cousin, everything. They asked him, what happened to you? He says, for 30 years I'm crossing the street, and I was never hit by a car at all. Right? So why we only give Kiddush, when we're Chas v'sholom, if the person, maybe we should protect everyone, hit by a car? What about life itself? If we understood the bracha of life itself, and we had the hakaras hatoiv for life itself, that is the greatest bracha in the world at a shayach, and is the yesod of tshuva. I was in a camp this Shabbos, and I like looking through the shemas. And I'm looking through the shemas, and I find a siddur. And I open up the siddur, and it's dated 10 years ago. And it's a letter on the front page of the siddur, handwritten letter, beautiful handwriting in poetry, from a teacher to a child, to a student. And I don't remember the exact lashon, but it was so beautiful. There was so much heart. There was so much hearts there. And I don't know, maybe it was a standard letter. Maybe she wrote it for all of her students, and it was a graduation gift. But it didn't seem to me that it was printed into the computer. It looked very, very real. And it said how, difficult times, and the siddur is always there for you, and through all your pain, we'll daven together for the rest of our lives, because the union of a teacher and a child is never goes away and is always there, and hopefully we'll all be davening together with this siddur in Yerushalayim. It was so beautiful. And I'm saying to myself, why in the world is this in the shemas? It's like, whatever this girl was going through, and again, I don't know, maybe it was a standard nusach for everyone. Didn't she have a feel? You can see the heart of the teacher plastered all over this letter. It's like, do we have an appreciation for life? Or did she say, what does this teacher want from me? And just slam down this siddur someplace and leave it? No, I don't know. Maybe she lost it by mistake. Maybe someone borrowed it. I don't know. But I'm wondering, in relationships between each other, how many people really reach out to the other one and the other side, whether it's between spouses or parents, we throw it into the shemus instead of having an appreciation. So we all know that in shul in the morning, people come and they collect money. We give tzedakah. When someone comes over to you and he says, and of course we've all had the experience, Ich kann reden mit euch eine Minute? Can I speak to you for a minute? So you know you're in trouble, right? You know this guy's not walking away with $1 here. This is going to be already. And when you say, no, you can't talk to me, or I don't, it's very hard to get. It's like some of them are good at it, You're cornered as you're putting together your talus. Can I speak to you for a minute? Or supposed to say no. It's going to take you a minute to put away drop your talus and run out. Okay, that's the way it is. I was just thinking. There's two kinds of davening. There's going around collecting tzedakah. I'm davening. I go through I do my route. I come to shul, do everything, and okay, you get a bunch of dollars. Shemayim, help me. And sometimes we stop and we say to Hashem, can I speak to you for a minute? Can I speak to you for half an hour? It's a different kind of a hachana for davening if you're thinking about it. So I was in this Sunday, yesterday morning actually. I was in the country. By the way, the country we call the Catskill Mountains, yes. And it was a big shul in a certain place. It's a big shul that services, many, many bungalow colonies around, and it's a beautiful, gorgeous shul. Doesn't make a difference where. There's hot mikvah, and there's plenty of cakes and cookies to keep your nisayon of diets going there, and it's a place to learn, really, l'shem l'teferes, zekeli vavei. The problem is, unlike the city, where at least you have a hope of finding a parking spot on the street, you can't park on the road. So the only option of parking is in this shul's parking lot. And most bungalow colonies are not within walking distance. So you come by car. And although there's quite a few parking spaces, but there are always more cars. On a Sunday morning, there are, especially prime time, like 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, 8, whatever. Of course, I was there at 7, but I'm just saying. There's more cars than parking spaces. So Yiddeloch, they manage. You know what I mean? They're mechadish new parking spaces. In between the lines, on the lines, the handicap spaces. Every Yid says, I'm such an onav, I'm handicapped compared to you. And then you park in the handicap spot. You figure out how to kasha things, But even then, and people, they park in the middle because they figure out the guy could probably back out and manage to, if you park mamish in the middle between. But even then, there's not enough spaces. So a lot of people just drive into the parking lot and they circle and drive out, and you wind up doing hakafas. And what else could you do? So I see a friend of mine leaving the shul with his talis and tefillin, and as I'm driving by, I roll down my window. I say, "You're pulling out? Can I follow you?" He says, "You join the other 5 people who are following me already," he says. So somehow, and it's, of course, you see hashgacha pratis, because you can circle 20 minutes, and then you see somebody pulling in for the first time, and pink, then someone pulls out, and he pulls in, right? That's the way it is. They don't give out tickets, It's hashgacha. If you waste time, the Rebbe says, im tazvenu yoim yemayim tazveka. You spend extra time davening and learning, I'll save your time someplace else. No, you don't lose time by doing the right things. Some Sefer used to say, person should be marva sedra. If you find it rather tedious, and maybe you're more of a lamdan, you should know the Gemara says, mashlim parshi yosef imatzibur is, what does it say? It says, marichan lo yom avashnaisa. So you'll have more time. If you're worried about your time, you'll have more time. Somebody told me he was in a place once on business, and there was a minyan there in the hotel, and there were some locals also. It blew by a davening, mamish, like the 100-yard dash of 30 seconds, He says the next time he was there was like 30, 40 years later. They were davening much slower. He asked some of the locals what happened. He says, we see our friends. We're always in a rush, and we see, where our friends are. These people are in their 80s and 90s. We're not in such a rush anymore. Get on slowly. You're okay. So finally, I find a parking spot, and I want to walk out, and my friend says to me, "Afreilichen Purim." I said, "Oh, come on, what is that supposed to mean?" I said, "Don't tell me that the davening here is like Purim. It happens to be they daven very nicely there." He says, "You'll understand when you get into the shul. Afreilichen Purim." I said, "You mean because we're going around and around in the parking lot?" No. I said, "What do you mean Afreilichen Purim?" And he drives away. Shine. I have to figure out every mishagas somebody says, like a Tosfos. I have to break my head to understand it. But then I came into the shul and I understood it. Being this is such a central place, and being that all the mishalachim that come to collect money for tzedakah obviously have little to do in the city, and on a Sunday morning, and especially the last Sunday morning of camp, you know how it is on Purim when you can't even daven every 2 seconds. I'm getting married this week. I'm getting married next week. I'm a chassan from Eretz Yisrael. I got married last week. Please, I'm trying to get married. Plus Kalin, this and yes. Tzarchi Amcha Merubim every 2 seconds, and you give right. Well, that's what it was like. It was Purim. It was Purim davening. Okay, like 5 people came to me between Baruch Sha'omar. That's between Baruch and Sha'omar. You know what I mean? So I remember the Mashgiach saying, and Mashgiach, like a Miller davening, he wouldn't hear an earthquake. But he used to insist they allow people to come over to him for tzedakah, even by a Hava Rabbah before Shema. He says the very Inyan that you have to stop for a second and be matriach yourself, take out money for someone else, he says, we don't know what that does in the Olam Yisrael. And I was just thinking for a moment, and I said, all these cars are leaving here. Next week, there'll be very few. The week afterwards, there'll be nobody in this parking lot. And no one knows where they're headed. No one knows where this world is headed. No one knows where the city is headed. No one knows where the country is headed. No one knows where anyone is headed in this world. So Purim is a tremendous chus. Purim is a shmira. So the tzedakah and Purim is a shmira for the entire year. And I think the person is right. The Eibishter gives all the people davening in the shul a chus to have a good year. Yes, and it's hard to stop every 2 seconds. Like some of these people, they don't even need the money. Well, okay. The Divrei Chaim once told someone, you would not give to 1,000 people that need tzedakah for the one person that's an imposter, that's running a business over here. He says, I don't mind giving to 1,000 people that are phonies if there's one real person over there. Okay? Tell me, would you buy 1,000 lottery tickets if you knew one of them was the Powerball? If you understand what the value of tzedakah is. So I was just thinking, in Switzerland, I read this someplace, that they get, you know how much you pay for a speeding ticket? It's some of the liberal socialists want to do it here too. It's based on your wealth. It's based on your tax return. If you're very, very rich, then you can wind up paying $100,000 for a ticket, for a speeding ticket. It's wealth-based. And if you're mamish poor, they give you money when you get a speeding. I don't know how it works exactly. Now, most people, a speeding ticket, it's not the money so much. It's the money is the way they say in Yiddish, a halbetzura. It's the points, right? Points is a lot. So I was just thinking, so in America, in New York State anyway, if you get a speeding ticket and you should not be speeding, so you get points, right? It's a problem if you get points. And the guy that was stopped and the policeman said to him, you know why I stopped you? No. You know why I stopped you? You're going 20 miles an hour over the speed limit. Do you have an excuse? And his wife says, well, you have to be careful. You see, he doesn't have a license. Would you be quiet already? You're driving without a license? I usually don't, but you see, I have this dead body in the trunk. And I had to. What? No, it's not. You see, the wife says, look, you have to realize he would never do it if he was sober. Okay, it's just that he's drunk. And finally, he calls in, and police cars come from all over the place, and they goes, and she and he says, we just, we also there's another concern. His wife says that the submachine guns we have between the first and the back seat, if you go slow, it could start it up. You know what I mean? Like so, all of a sudden there's SWAT teams all over the place, and they grab the guy and they throw him up against the car, and they said, okay, where's the dead? They look in the car. There's no dead body. There's no submachine guns. There's no. What's going on over here? He says, Oh, that's what the police told you? He probably told you I was speeding also. You know what I mean? Like, that's what he was. You'd get tzachayitz. Okay. But seriously speaking, speeding is no joke. It's mamash in the chrayas, taking the chrayas of other people's lives around you. So, even if a person gets points on his license, and if he gets, 12 points, your license gets suspended, and it's not geschmack. But there are eitzes to get point reduction. One of the eitzes is driver's ed class. You take a safe driving course, brings down a few points. Of course, there's a limit to how often you can take the course. Okay. I got that went to driver's ed. My yeshiva didn't have it. We snuck out by English and registered myself to someplace that had a drive. We had Mr. Epstein. He was a gewaldik. He taught us, he says, if a car doesn't start on the road, you don't have to be a big chacham. He took out a pen and he showed us, you remember the old cars had carburetors? They had like this butterfly, they had like a round thing in the middle of the engine, like a round, looked like the top of a pot. Someone help me over here, who's my age? And you turned this butterfly and you took off the top. And then there was like a little flywheel and an opening that went, a shutter that went up and closed. And that's how the air came in and the gas, as you press the gas. And if you, sometimes it got stuck. So the engine wasn't getting the gas, it wasn't starting. And if you stuck a pen or a little screwdriver in to keep it open, it got the air. Remember that, those days? And the engine would start. He says, hey, you can make yourself, take out a whole tool chest and make yourself look good. And this, stick in the thing and tell him to start the car. The engine will start. And you'll be a mamash chaverim member. There was no chaverim then. You'll be a good. So that's God. God, I had some cars that only started that way. Problem today is go find the carburetor. Right? Go. So another thing I remember what Mr. Epstein said. He said like this: make sure when you drive, you clean your windows on a sunny day. We looked at him like, what did you drink this morning? He said to me, I know what I said. You clean your windows on a sunny day. So we said to him, why do we have to clean our windows on a sunny day? So he said to them, snow, you have no choice. I don't have to tell you that. But a window on a sunny day, if it's not clean and you drive into the sun, you don't see a thing. Because the little particles of sand all glow in the sun. It's more important on a sunny day, he says, to wash down your windows than it is even on a wintry day. And he's right. And I'm just thinking, comes now Elul, the sun is still shining. And comes to Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, the sun is on us. When the sun is on us, those little aveiros, the avak lashon hara, the dust of lashon hara, it shines, right? Now's the time that we have to clean our windows. And there's no greater way of cleaning our windows than when a person just says, thank you Hashem for life. When a person has an appreciation of life. The Rechaim HaKadosh says that the Yetzer Hara's first attack on a person is he shouldn't appreciate that the Rebbeinu Shalom is giving him life. Doesn't appreciate life. Gives you a koyach, lases chayil, and right afterwards the pasuk talks about avodah zarah. By not appreciating the gift of life, the next thing is avodah zarah, and the worst of avodah zarah. I'll repeat to you what I heard from my good friend Rabbi Gavril Lam. He said like this, very powerful thought. Not all that are happy are thankful, but all those that are thankful are happy. Someone to be thankful, he has to be happy. So there's a story of a Yid in Eretz Yisrael who had a hotel. And when you're in a hotel, every single Leil Shabbos, you don't really have much menuchas hanefesh. So he decided, his wife said, we need a break, we have to go to a hotel. Take any of the rooms. No, we're going to a different hotel. It's very hard for a hotel owner to go to a different hotel, but that's what he did. And he realized, his wife was right, and he's going to have a menuchadika Shabbos. And like seconds before Shabbos, he gets a call from his manager. He says there's a fire. It's burning all around in the garbage dump right near, and the walls are starting to catch. He says the whole hotel is, I had to call you. I don't know what to do. And the guy says, what? And he goes, oops, sorry, shkia, boom. So here he goes. He's going to have some Shabbos, right? His hotel is in flames. He decided, Shabbos is Shabbos. There's nothing he can do about it. This is an assayan of a lifetime. And he did his best that Shabbos to keep his mind off it. But Shabbos, he called, and he said, you're not going to believe it, the fire department came, and mamish put out the fire, no serious damage. Everything went fine. The hotel people came back into the hotel. Alles is good. Not only that, the garbage burnt. Don't even have to take out the garbage. So he said, I'm sorry, I knew it was before Shabbos, I had to call you. What should I do? Afterwards it was Shkia, you know? So he told his Rav the story. So he said, it's a good thing I didn't worry. So the Rav said, maybe because you didn't worry, that's why it happened. That the gift of Shabbos is that if we have the Mesiras Nefesh to put things on hold, the Rebbeinu Shem says, I can take care of things of you that under normal circumstances I can't. Says the Chassam Sofer, the Pasuk says, Kishem Hashem Ekra, Havi Goydel Elokeinu. If we can find the Shem Hashem, Havi Goydel. Goydel is the midah of Chesed. Okay, La Godoil, HaGibra V'Anoira, Elokeinu, even to the midas Hadin. The Vodaath Yisrael, Kedushas Levi say a similar thing, and just be mamshech in a mashal. Every single day of our lives, there is a truckload of Yeshuas dispatched every single day toward us. Yeah, great, where is it? Comes to a checkpoint. The checkpoint is the Midas Hadin, and the Midas Hadin says, let's check. They don't check the truck, but they check the intended recipient. Is he worthy of it or not? Says the Kedushas Levi, even though we daven 3 times a day, do we really daven 3 times a day? Some tefillos that we daven go straight to the Sitra Achra. But most tefillos that we daven are put on hold, they're put on a shelf. Let's see what happens. And then you have one tefillah where it's not because you're scared, it's not because you're worried. You just decide, for 30 years I was never hit by a car. You just decide to say thank you to Vodaath Shalom for life. And as soon as you do that, they take all the tefillos that are on the shelf, and it's combined into one powerful, awesome tefillah that goes through to Shemayim. And suddenly the checkpoint is removed. Not only is the checkpoint removed, but those that were standing by the checkpoint blocking the trucks now go behind the trucks and they start pushing them. If you're driving on Route 17 or you're driving up to the country, as most of you would be driving back from the country, you may notice when you pass Kiryas Yoel, they're building a whole new section, mamish right up to the highway. Huge, big, beautiful, beautiful apartment complexes. So a very interesting story. As they were digging in a place that was just grass, the construction workers came upon a concrete bunker, a very well-fortified concrete bunker, and they did research. And it turned out that there was a World War II veteran that came home. And he was suffering terribly from some type of post-trauma. And he was sure the Nazis are going to come back and take revenge on him. And he built a concrete bunker underneath his house. He had a house in the woods. There was only a small little dirt road. You should see it now, that small little. But then it was very isolated and desolate. And he mamish, for most of his life, he lived in this bunker. And I'm just thinking to myself, Nebuch. Can't judge anybody. But how many of us are we're so ibigin and we can't get it. That person did this to me, and she did it to me, and he did it to me, and she said this, and he said that, and every little fight you have goes back to the yichud room and all the things that you say. Just get out of the bunker. Get out of the bunker and appreciate the moment of life. So Rachel Eishes Rabbi Akiva, she marries Rabbi Akiva ben Kalbas, says, what? The richest man in Klal Yisrael, one of the richest, she marries, Rabbi Akiva was by then, he had a wife, he had children from a previous marriage. Amma Oretz, what did you do? And he's so angry that he makes a neder, you can't have any enough for my nechas, for my estate. And they're living, all they have is straw, they don't even have beds. And in the morning, they have to remove the straw from their hair. And obviously, there was one morning, human beings are human beings. She was having a hard time. And he told her, Rabbi Akiva says to her, he says, if I had, I would buy you on your hair, instead of you having to remove the straw from your head, I would buy you a Torah Shel Zahav. Torah Shel Yerushalayim was a famous crown like on their head. And as they're talking, a man knocks on the door, and he says, please, my wife just had a baby, I need straw. Do you have any straw? I don't have any straw. Oh, now they felt good that they have straw. And Chazal say, who was this person? It was Eliyahu Navi. I don't understand. Why do I feel better because someone else doesn't even have straw? I still don't have furniture. I still don't have a bed. I still have to sleep on the straw. We say, Amcha Yisrael, if you're saying your 10 kapitlach Tillim like you're supposed to, like the Mishnah Berurah brings in Elul, So we say in the tefillah afterwards, Shlo yitztarchu Yisrael loy lezeh lezeh. What does that mean? You give a person nechama, you don't have furniture. This guy doesn't even have straw. We shouldn't need that kind of a nechama. So Reb Chaim Shmulevitz says, okay, he taught them to be a sameach bechelkai. But I once heard a Ma'ir Dik Pshat. Eliyahu Hanavi, potentially the Maral talks about this, the Marnaim talks about it, is within all of us. And when a person has an appreciation for life itself, there's a koich of Eliyahu that's nisgala. Whenever someone gives over a psura toiva, there's a nitzutz of Eliyahu within. I once told Rav Shalom Atcher Rabashkin Zalzan Gezant, he told me that when they came to tell him that he was pardoned, so they told him, Rabashkin, pack your bags. And that could have meant he's being transferred to a different prison. That's the worst thing in the world. Because Vinishvi, in the prison that he is, he already knows the ropes a little bit. The guy didn't tell him he was being pardoned. He came into the warden's office, the warden told him, you're going home. I said, he's going to tell you, he didn't want to tell him, the other prisoners shouldn't hear because they could attack him. He's going to tell him because he wasn't Zaycha, that Eliyahu Navi, if you bring someone a Psura Toiva, good news, there's a nitzutz, a spark of Eliyahu that comes into you, says the Zohar. He wasn't Zaycha to be there. He wasn't Zaycha to have it. This person was Eliyahu Navi. And he came to them and said, my wife had a baby, the gift of life. Maybe you have some straw. And they looked at him the way he appreciated life, and that was their nechama. That gave them the bracha and the impetus that she said to him right away, you know what, just for us to live this way is no point, you go off to learn. And we know the rest is history. So a Rav once came to the Baal Shem Tov, and the Rav said to the Baal Shem Tov, should I do a shidduch with a man who was a water carrier till now, but now he became very wealthy? How did the water carrier become wealthy? I don't know, Amazon. He wrote a book about water carrying. I have no idea how he became wealthy. He became wealthy. And the water carrier decided, he wants the Rav's son. So he hired a shadchan, and apparently this water carrier, he hired the malamed to be the shadchan, and this water carrier was a very smart man. He said, you know how much shadchanis you're going to get? We are going to record how many times the gevir yells at, the Rav is going to yell at you when you suggest the shidduch, and depending on how many times he's going to yell at you and how high he's going to be screaming, that's how much money you're going to get. The more he yells and the higher he screams, you're going to get more money. You understand the genius of this? So this shadchan knocks on the door. I read a shidduch with a water carrier. What? Oh, that's not good enough for me. I need read a shidduch with a water carrier. What? We're getting better. I need Parnas over here. I think your son will be fine for the water carrier. What is with you? Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem. You realize the shadchan wasn't giving up over here. You know what I mean? He slammed the door. He climbed into the window. He slammed the window. He climbed into the roof. Some shadchanim do that anyway, but he was, he's going at it. So Lamaisa, he was relentless. So at one point he came to the Baal Shem Tov, and he said, "Should I do the shidduch? I mean, is it passes? I'm a Rav." So the Baal Shem Tov told him, "Is he Yerushalayim?" He says, "Yeah, it's Yerushalayim." He's obviously smart. He said, "Do the shidduch." And when he left, the Baal Shem Tov said, "The Olam Halitzonis is a shatchen toiv, is a good shatchen." What does that mean? So the Baal Shem Tov revealed to them, this Rav, this shidduch was a boyam yoyim koydem mitzir savlad nachrizim bas ploin the plenty was b'shed. But what happened in Shemayim? In those days there was a minig, a custom, a terrible custom, but that's how it was, that the rabbi had to go to the neighboring communities and collect his wages. That's how it went. Once a year he went around, and this Rav was going from place to place, and he came into a shul, and somebody was giving a drush over there. He asked the kasha. Everyone burst into laughter. What kind of a kasha is that? And the Rav was red in his face. And he comes to the next shul, and again he asks the kasha, and again they all burst into laughter. It happened a bunch of times. The Rav was very demoralized. Listen, he wakes up. It's a dream. The whole thing was a dream. He said, even though it was all a dream, L'maisa, it took him off his pedestal. And because of that, when the shadchan came and said, no, he thinks it is a good shidduch, he says, I'm not so great, maybe Taki is a good shidduch. He says, when Hashemayim, the whatever that means, the Olam HaLitzonis, is a shatchan toiv. Now, to the Rav's credit, he didn't sulk under the pillow. he recalibrated and said, okay, so maybe it's a good shidduch, okay? Maybe this is where I'm taka supposed to be. Let me go for it. How many times in our life, oh, yeah, my spouse said something to me I can't believe after all these years. She said that, he said that, shviger, shver, whatever, person of shul. Maybe the Rebbe Hashem is putting you where you're supposed to be. I'll put him in his place. It's not the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, not with that niggun. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says there's certain shidduchim that have to happen, and we need it over here. We need it over here for you to happen. You know, there's a person, he came to Eretz Yisrael, I read this someplace, and they told him there's no point for you to look for a job, because you don't know how to read or write. And he was looking, he said, the Rebbe Hashem wants to give me parnassi, he's going to give him parnassi. He saw an application for government jobs, and very strange, it said only if you can't read any language. And a bunch of people lined up for the job, and he lined up, you all said we can't read. They said, okay, wait in the waiting room, we'll soon call you. In the waiting room were a bunch of newspapers and magazines, and a camera, and one by one they passed everyone, because as they were sitting there, I was just looking at the pictures, and it didn't work. And this person was like, he didn't even bother picking up the newspaper, and they called him in, and they got the job, and he was working, according to what I read, he was working for the Israeli intelligence authorities. They needed him to shred papers. But they wanted someone who doesn't know how to read, just in case, they didn't want him to read the Soidus and Chayda, the way they say. So he said, if I would have known how to read, I wouldn't have gotten the job. Yeah, Hashem sometimes puts us in our place, because there's a tikkun that we have to have. Moshe Abba Kamyan, I don't know if you remember him, he was hurt during the war, he was a genius, but during the war he went through a lot, and he wandered from place to place. Rav Belsky's Chanarach used to take care of him when he came to Camp Aguda. Weeks before, he would send articles of newspapers, and they all knew him from Shanghai. And I remember once I was in Camp Aguda, and Rav Gifter, Chanarach, was sitting outside next to Rav Ruderman, and all the kids were standing around and around. They were like roped off. And Moshe Abba came in, his way. He looked like a vagabond, but he was a tire in the Shama. And he slept in Vodaath many years. He slept in Lakewood many years. And he sat down. He plopped himself down between Rav Ruderman and Rav Gifter. They knew him. And out of his bag, he always sent bags of newspapers. He took out a Chinese newspaper. And he opens it up. And Rav Gifter looks at him. And he says to Moshe Abba, he says, you versteht Chinesisch? You know how to read Chinese? So he said, in a newspaper, the only thing that's true is between the lines. So between the lines, what's the difference if it's Chinese or English? Between the lines, he said, is the same, right? That's what it is. Okay. So Rav Zilberstein has a murder story. He says there was a chashav, he sits on a bus in Yerushalayim, and sitting next to him is a fellow, looks, has like two hairs and a little yarmulke hanging with a pin from it, and he has a big bag, and he says, "You're a Rosh Yeshiva?" He says, "Yeah, how can I help you?" He says, "Do you need a shas? I have like a little shas in my bag." So he said, where did you get this shas from? He says, it's like for 50 years, when I came here, the government gave me a job. I work in a recycling plant that recycles paper. Everyone brings their paper, they pay by the pound, they recycle it, but certain types of paper can't be recycled, and I'm here to pull out those papers. He says a lot of times I don't know how to learn, I see svarim coming by, and I grab it out. If not, it would get grinded up, and chas v'shalom be turned into toilet paper, whatever they use it for. So a lot of times I grab the svarim out. He says, and I'm working here many, many years. He says, I found a whole shas over here. And this yid, tell what a yid is. He says, I don't want my boss to lose, because Lamaisa, he paid for it. So I go out, I weigh the svarim, and I find newspapers on the streets that could be recycled, and I bring it back to make sure he doesn't lose anything. So he has the equal amount of paper. And this yid says, I would have retired a long time ago. It's my achrayus. If I retire, who's going to take this job? Doesn't pay anything. I have to protect the shameless. You understand who he is? We understand who a person is. So when I was in yeshiva, we had a car. But it was an illegal car. I was 17 years old. It was owned jointly. The car wasn't worth that much, so when you divided it amongst the partners, it was less than a shava pruta per person. So I was able to say, I don't really own the car. It was a 1966 American Motors Gremlin stick shift, but it didn't have the shift and the clutch. It also didn't have, because everybody wanted, there was a shtick, you know how to drive a clutch. That was a choshen zach. And there was no, the gauge that told you how much gas was gone. Bacher, no one knows how much gas is in the car. And the mechanic said it doesn't pay to fix. When the fuel pump goes, this thing is connected to the fuel pump. When we placed the fuel pump, our mazel, everything in this car went except for the fuel pump. And this car was constantly running out of gas. Even if it stood in one place, it ran out of gas. Until we realized you put a Negelwasser schissel underneath it, caught the gas, and then poured it back in before we started. And so we recycled most of the gas. The last time I saw this car is when we left it on the FDR drive in the middle lane on Thursday night in a snowstorm. Somebody told us, there's a Salamed of Tzaddik that lives in Spanish Harlem. We were going to see him. Don't ask, okay? The Bacharim, how did we know how much gas was in the car? We kept like a spiral notebook in the glove compartment. Okay. We were supposed to write down how much gas they used. With the mileage, we were going to figure it out. We had a red container of gas. Every once in a while, we poured the gas in. And in order to get it to start, you had to jump on the car. If the car was totally empty and you poured in gas, to get the gas to circulate, there were no fuel injector. We were the fuel injector. You had to jump on the car. There was one bacher, he was like a shmaka bacher, that's the sprite Yiddishkeit a little bit, you know what I mean? He used to jump on the bumper till the bumper came off. That didn't work. I remember once, 3 a.m., I was jumping on the trunk of the car, and a police car passed by and said, "What are you doing?" Unless I wasn't arrested. Lesson 1 from this story, Rabbi said, don't let your bacharim drive, okay? You know, somebody said he's looking for told the shadchan, I will not take a boy that has a license. Don't worry. On my word, my honor. Found that afterwards, the bachar had a license. He says, what did you do? He says, his license was suspended. He doesn't have a license. That's not a problem. Number 2, Rabbi say, you bring a bachar under the chuppah, bench goimel, because you have no idea what he did as a bachar. Lesson number 3, that sometimes we need to be shaken up. Yeah, the Rebbeinu Hashem gives us the gas we need, but it doesn't work. To get it to be circulate, we need to, I think tonight's the Yahrzeit of Rabbi Shagir Feivel Mendelovich, Zecher Tzadik Levracha, a famous story. I think I've said it here because it comes out very often, the Yahrzeit. The Mishgiach used to say that they were walking together and there was a bacher ripped off a leaf from a bush. And he said, how could you do that? The Eibush is Bria. Everything in the Bria says Shira to Hashem. And they passed by this tree that was swaying back and forth. And he said, you see, the tree is swaying back and forth. This tree is saying Shira to the Eibishter. And he said, you see the little leaf all the way on top? That's the Baal Tefillah. That's the Baal Tefillah. Rabbi Shagir Feivel used to say you have to learn from everybody. He said you have to nash from the Hungarians, you have to nash their generosity, from the Litvaks, the Lomdis, from Hasidim, the Bren, from Americans, their Tmimis, sent each Talmud to different Rebbeim, no cookie cutter. He himself was a Talmud of the Arugas HaBaisim. Said a story, he was in Scranton. There was a Yiddish community there, and someone tried to run him over. Yes, anti-Semites were always around. And he saw the image of his Rebbe, and he fell back. And then the car zoomed by. But he saw every Talmud as a separate Bria of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He used to send different Talmidim to different Rebbes. This is for you, this is for you. Rav Palmschein Levrach used to say, he used to ask him, Rebbeim, we feel we're getting burnt out. He said, if you teach Talmidim, you're not going to get burnt out. If you teach Gemara, you'll get burnt out. Teach Talmidim, you always have new Talmidim. So the Chayza was by a chassan of one of his kids, and he davened a very, very long Shemon Esrei. They're like, the caterers, the photographer. Well. Afterwards, he said, you know why he davened such a long Shemon Esrei? He says, Aboim Yoim Kaidem Yitzir Savlad Machrizim Bas Ploni Leploni. They call out the daughter of so-and-so is going to marry so-and-so. And there's a time, a split second when the chuppah has to take place. And if you're ready too early, what does the Eibush do? There's a fight between the mechatanim. So it gets pushed off. He said, I didn't want there should be a fight, so I decided to daven until that last minute. Okay? So we don't have the Ruach HaKodesh to know till when to daven. But if there are little fights before Shabbos, the Eibush says this has to be that way. So, just to make a quick chazara, let's not build a bunker. Let's live our lives. Let's open our ovens, Erev Shabbos. Grab the moment and give tzedakah, especially when you feel like saying another nudge, which is ridiculous. Now's when your tzedakah is going to count. And Be'ezra Hashem Yisbarach, next year, let's report one to another that we didn't leave any special Siddur in the Shemos. The father of the Moranayim. He was Zeicher to the Moranayim. He was a Gabbai, and he used to give out the Slichas before Slichas. And once he gave out all the good Slichas, the only ones that were left were ripped ones, and the Rosh came and said, my Slichas, and he gave him a ripped one. He says, this is what you give me? Whack! Just a Mordek Achana for Slichas. He didn't answer one word. He said, I'm sorry, I'll make sure to have a new Slichas for you next time. He said, I am who I am. Nothing's going to change. He's the Rosh I'm the Gabi. It's fine. Not makbid on him. And then he was Zeicher to have the son of the Moranayim. So if we do get whacked, and there is an issue and things aren't going the way we want, it just may be that the Rebbe gave you now such a gift. The Rebbe says, I got to jump on you to get it to circulate. Don't fight it off, because we can miss an opportunity of a lifetime. Let's all take a Kabbalah on ourselves, B'li Neder, from Boston to Boston, from year to year. And Bez Hashem Yisborach, maybe I can tell you next year that I did hold a diet. And hopefully I'll be saying it in Yerushalayim, Ir HaKadosh. Shkaich.
Shem Yegin Shiur Torah Moses Boston like to give a big Yeshikach, Rabbi Schachter for the inspiring Josh. I would like to give a big Yeshikach to the supporters and sponsors of tonight's Shiur, Michael Exter, Chus Refuah Shleima, Sarah Bas Dasha, Ramitza Ben Miriam, Hannah Miriam Bas Spinzer, Dov Ben Rivka, and Meir Ben Sarah, B'Soy Shachel Yisrael. Rabbi Shaul Lezer as a Chus Refuah Shleima for Reuven Yosef Ben Braina, B'Soy Shachel Yisrael. Be'elim Shem B'Chus V'Atzlocha, Mr. and Mrs. Yitzchak Klug, Bili Nishmas Over Moshe Pinchas Ben Reb Dov Halevi Alav Shalom Yotzei Zayin El and Lili Nishmas Aviyah Reb Tzvi Moshe Ben Shalom Yaakov Alav Shalom Reb Heshi Jacob. Dr. Graves Chus is sponsoring one of the remaining Shiurim who has a V'chelik and Abotzas HaTorah of Irgun Shiur Torah throughout the year worldwide. Call 718-851-8651 or email ist@yeshivana.com. Anya ben Akasha, Moshe Baruch Lazakis, as the show figure him, Wilhelm Torah Mitzvah Shem, Adonai Chofes, and Man Sidka, Yagdel Torah V'Yader. Yisrael